So our topic today is gender inequality. In this PowerPoint, we'll be discussing the Great Caliban, the struggle against the rebel body. Before going into the finer details of the reading, we just want to give a brief concept of gender inequality, which is basically depicts that men and women are not on equal footing with one another, which results in them having totally different experiences in terms of how they need treated by society, whether that's through favoritism, etc. Some of the reasons for this could be through stereotypes from society itself, could be due to misinterpretation of religion. According to the Great Caliban, the transition to capitalism was a huge reason as to why gender inequality began.
So even the title of the book suggests very strong enemies to capitalism. Like the book, mainly to begin with, the book is about the history of the body and how the body was, the human body was viewed, or how the view of it changed during the transition to capitalism. Not only does it talk about the body in general, but it talks about the feminist examination or the female perspective of that transition. So the Caliban, both the Caliban and the witch represent enemies of capitalism. The Caliban is a character from Shakespeare, from one of Shakespeare's stories, The Tempest, and it represents the anti-colonial rebel. But not only that, it's also a symbol for the proletariat and the proletarian body, and how the proletarian body is an instrument for resistance to the ideas of capitalism. And the witch represents the female subject that capitalism destroyed. It represents the heretic and the healer and the disobedient wife that no one wants in society, and the woman who dared to live alone, which is also not wanted in society, and the woman who poisoned the master's food and inspired the slaves to revolt. So another concept that's like really important in the idea of capitalism is, pre-capitalism ideologies, is magic. The reason for that is capitalism doesn't want the working class or the proletariat to get what they want without working for it, which is something that magic offers. So capitalism is completely against the idea of getting what you want without working for it, and it's for laborers working to create wealth for themselves. The second thing is magic is associated with witches, and witches are associated with women, because most, if not all, witches are women. So a witch hunt meant, in reality, it was a war against women. It wasn't just witches that practiced magic. So the reason witches are considered an enemy of capitalism is because of people's reliance on the power of magic rather than the reliance on their physical labor. So there was a movement of witch hunting that happened where women who were considered witches were killed. And most witches were women, and that created an excuse for hunting both witches accused of witchcraft and also women who were unwanted by society. So the loud women and the rebellious women and the disobedient women that were killed under the name of, or under the excuse of, witchcraft. But in reality, they were just killed because they were unwanted members of society. They also killed women who spoke about their sexual body, or women that had a sense of their body, because they were considered to be witches. And one of the preconditions of capitalism, or one of the ideas of capitalism that would take them to, or would take capitalism to what it wanted, is disciplining the body. So the author of the book says that disciplining the body was an attempt by the state and the church, which were authority figures at pre-capitalist times. It was an attempt to transform the individual's power to labor power. And since capitalist wealth is derived from since it's derived from exploiting labor, the body is considered to be a container of power, and the body is a representation of their wealth. If they had labor, if they had workers, they had wealth. And so the body became, and to discipline the body became separated from the self and its desires and its feelings.
Mechanization of the body is an idea that emerged with the emergence of capitalism. It is considering the body merely as a machine that only follows orders. This repressed desires, emotions, and any behavior that needs to be stopped. However, it creates a conflict between the mind and the body. For instance, if the body wants to go out naked, the mind stops it because it's a socially inappropriate behavior. There are two models of mechanization of the body, Cartesian and Hobbesian. The Cartesian model is by Descartes, who thinks that the body is a machine that is controlled by the mind or soul. As it can be seen from the diagram, to Descartes, the inputs are sent in through the sensory organs, then to the brain, then to the senseless body parts. He believes that the rational mind can develop self-management through controlling the passions and desires of the body. By this, the body becomes subject of the will, making the relation of the body and mind a master-slave relationship. As a result of this, the mind can have complete control over the body. This is, of course, desirable by the state, as it serves a theoretical premise for work discipline, which is a precondition of capitalism, as through this theory, the mind can always control the body to go to work. Furthermore, this theory defends the Christian idea of immortality of the soul and the possibility of defeating atheism in natural magic. Furthermore, it replaces the unpredictable power of the magician by the power of self-management or administration of the body. The second model of mechanization of the body is the Hobbesian model by Hobbes, who thinks of the body as a machine controlled by the state. It externalizes the function of command to the absolute authority of the state. Hobbes argues that humans by nature seek dominance, and therefore the absolute power of the king is necessary to maintain peaceful society. However, this model was not favorable by capitalism, as when one's commands do not come from his own mind, an individual might revolt against the state. Moreover, this theory was critiqued as it has no freedom of will or conscience, and control is only for the person with the longest sword. Moreover, Alexander Ross views that the torture of an accusing conscience is more restraining than a torturer. In addition, this theory viewed the human as a machine moved only by appetite, rejecting the idea of human creature in the image of God. As a result of this mechanization of the body, a sense of individual identity was developed, and there was a sense of otherness when dealing with one's own mind because of the conflict between the mind and the body. Therefore, it created a difference between the bourgeoisie and the proletariats, as the proletariats had little self-discipline. This can be because when philosophers spoke of men, they exclusively referenced the elite white upper-class adult males, so the proletariats were marginalized. However, the proletariats were seen in society as a great beast or multi-headed monster. In fact, society viewed that there was a beast in every person, and the dominant classes tried to curb this beast by observing their bodies, leading to using cutlery, feeling shame with respect to nakedness, developing manners regarding how one laughs, jokes, sits, walks, and so on. The Puritans believed that the Antichrist was in every man. With this thought that the body of man is full of filth, the analysis of excretions started, as excretions were disgusting to the middle classes, especially because it interrupts labor time. For the Puritans, excretions are a visible sign of corruption of human. With capitalism, bourgeoisie viewed the proletariats as monsters of idleness and drunkenness. To them, the proletariats are characterized by indiscipline, lack of productivity, lust for immediate physical satisfaction. The utopia for the proletariats was not based on labor. However, the state wanted to change this lazy being into a persistently tireless worker. This was an attempt to rationalize human nature to rechannel its power into labor power. But with the birth of the body of the 17th century, the idea of the body as a natural being disappeared, and the body became a political signifier of class relations and a basis for human exploitation.
The reading suggests that through the combination of the Cartesian model, the Hobbesian model, centralization of state power, and the bourgeois view of the proletariat, there was a result of the body being open to infinite manipulation, where a person could easily be manipulated by someone, and this contributed to increasing the ruling class control over human nature and over the natural world in general. Our interpretation of this is that this is one of the prime reasons why people's natural instinct is to prefer men over women for job positions, for example, as this is how the world has been shaped and how ideologies have been altered from a very early stage. Such mechanisms can be seen through other examples, such as the fact that we use a watch to tell the time instead of astrology, for example, which could have been a situation that people went through a long time ago. A long time ago, people also used to believe in magic, but now we don't necessarily believe in magic, we just enjoy it. So, and the fact maybe that there are 12 months per year instead of using other calendars. So these are certain things that we as human consider fixed. And basically what the point we're trying to prove is that there's a subtle unspoken inequality that men are considered to be intellectually superior to women. And this is an example of how social control has resulted in this.
So capitalism has tried to shape how people see their bodies and turn them into machines and robots to profit off of them. And we think that as a result of the actions of capitalism, not necessarily directly to women, but to the body in general, has affected gender and has resulted in gender inequality and has affected females greatly. So not only did they mechanize the human body in general, they also mechanized the female body in specific. So because the female body was seen also as a machine, but as a machine whose sole purpose is to reproduce labor. So the female was seen as a uterus, whose only role is to reproduce, and by reproducing, she creates more productive people in society that capitalists can profit off of. So the state had control over the female body, and it strongly disapproved abortions and contraceptions in order for them to reproduce labor. Also, the act of witch hunting and it killed a lot of women that were unwanted by society at the time. Not only that, but they consider the female body as a weak and irrational body. There's a reference to that in the reading when they say this means that while the proletariat become a body, the body become the proletariat, and in particular the weak irrational female. So they compare the proletariat body as a weak and an irrational body, and they give an example of the weak irrational female. So this references the female as a weak irrational being. So we think as a group, after reading this reading and looking at these ideas, we think that the effect of capitalism on females has extended into the time we are in now, because women had to undergo an intense process of social degradation. They lost their social power, and when they transitioned to capitalism, due to be targets of killings. We think that this put females in a place of risk and fear, and since they were targets during the witch hunt, they were encouraged not to walk alone or on the streets or sit outside their home. And we think that this is still applicable today, that women have, since this witch hunt, maybe, like, we think that this witch hunt has affected females and that since that witch hunt, they have been a target, and that they are still encouraged not to walk alone, because at least if they're not targets of killings, then at least they're targets of violence. However, some women refuse to be part of the social reorder, and they refuse to be mechanized, their bodies to be mechanized, because they didn't want to be the state to be in control of them. So they took part in something that's really annoyed, or the state, or something that was the state really against, which was non-reproductive sex, because the state doesn't get anything out of that non-reproductive sex, because they want productive members of society that will create wealth for them later on. They also led peasant revolt, which is something unexpected of the weak, irrational female body.
These are some questions that we think are interesting to think about and reflect on. So how do you think the mechanization of the body affect one's self-image today? I think that today our bodies and minds are greatly separated, and our minds always control our bodies to follow the social norms. How many days, for example, did you forcibly leave the bed to go to university? Because that's what you're supposed to do. Nowadays, we're seeing the opposite. While our bodies want to go out and socialize, our minds force the bodies to stay in quarantine because that's the safe option.
A second question to think about is, how are we subconsciously influenced by predetermined ideologies set a long time ago? We've already shown the examples of how we use a watch to tell the time. We have a calendar year of 12 months. So what is influenced by stuff that maybe even if we don't think about it, we still think it's there. Another question to think about is gender inequality, and has it decreased over time, or is it still very much at large? Even though maybe we see more feminist movements nowadays, do we still think that maybe it's at large, but maybe it's just maybe invisible rather than not being there?
Another question to think about is whether the female body in specific, as opposed to the human body in general, if it can be mechanized. And I think, like as Dr. Edina said in class, that women are seen as nature and men as culture, even though it's said as a bad thing that women are nature, which is something that's not evolved or educated, or I think that the female body is nature in a good way, and I think that the female body is a beautiful thing that needs to be appreciated beyond being treated like robots or just a means of reproduction. So yes, this is our reflection and opinion about the reading, and we hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us.